Hi, my name is Angela Vanoni. I'm a pest control advisor and certified crop advisor. I'm also a conservation steward for the Farm Journal and Farm Journal Foundation as a part of ACAM. I work here in Ventura County with primarily citrus and avocados, but today I'm going to give you an introduction to integrated pest management that applies to all aspects of agriculture. So let's first start with the definition of integrated pest management. So integrated pest management, or IPM, is a sustainable approach to managing pests by combining the use of all practical methods of pest control, including cultural, biological, mechanical, and chemical methods in a manner that attains the grower's goal while minimizing economic, health, and environmental risks. And this is a long technical definition put out by the university, but we're going to simplify it a little bit. So what's the translation of that? So IPM is essentially using all of the available tools to keep pest populations low. And implementing a pest control program like this can prevent resistance to certain chemistries that might be overused, maintain or increase the cost effectiveness of pest management programs, and reduce the potential for air and groundwater contamination. So it's really all about selecting the right tool for the job to keep our pest levels manageable. So the IPM pyramid of tools, now this is looking back at our original technical definition and kind of breaking it apart into more digestible pieces. So the foundation of IPM, oops, excuse me, I'll go back here, a couple slides. Okay, so the foundation of IPM is based on identification and understanding of the pest. And then we can implement these preventative measures like cultural controls and sanitation, physical and mechanical control, biological control, and then at the top of our pyramid is our chemical applications. So let's take a closer look at ID and understanding. So ID and understanding allows you to monitor for pests and then create thresholds where you need to take action. So when they hit an economic injury point. So in order to do that, we need to find out what are the major pests in our field, how can we monitor those populations, and when do we need to take action? And to help you answer these questions, you can contact a pest control advisor, talk to your local farm advisor, and of course, stay in touch with your commodity groups to see what pests are on the rise. And if you want to do some of this monitoring yourself, one great resource is utilizing the UC IPM website. So here on the next slide, I have a little screenshot of what the UC IPM website looks like. And all you have to do is Google this, click on agriculture, click on the certain crop that you're interested in, and you'll be presented with a screen like this, and it will break down what the major pests are for your particular crop, what diseases you might see during the growing season, and how to monitor for them and different methods of controlling them. So I have a couple of examples here on why this is so important. So my middle picture here is from a grower that called me out and said, hey, I have this really bad mealybug problem in my citrus and I need a treatment recommendation. So we went out and took a look, and these little white fuzzy insects that look very, very similar to mealybug, we found out weren't actually mealybug, but Cryptolemus mealybug destroyers. And they had moved in on their own and taken care of this mealybug infestation below it. And we didn't actually have to apply any sort of treatment. So took care of itself. And we utilized that information to determine that, hey, you don't have to spray, you're going to save yourself some money, and problem solved. So the next picture I have here on the right is an example of knowing your pest and knowing when a pest is a pest. So here I have the question, is this a pest? Now, if this citrus tree were a newly planted citrus tree and we started seeing these leaf miter tunnels develop, we would definitely consider that a pest because it would prevent that tree from truly getting established and creating a nice healthy canopy. But if this is on a mature tree that's doing fairly well, it really doesn't affect the tree that much. And it pretty much just causes cosmetic damage and doesn't need treatment. So these are all examples of why identification and having the knowledge about your pest and about your crop is so, so important for IPM. So next up on our pyramid is cultural and sanitation. So cultural controls are the practice of reducing pest establishment, reproduction, dispersal, and survival. So a healthy plant can much better withstand the pressure than a stressed plant. And that starts off with selecting good, healthy stock to start with. So if you can select a root stock or a seed that's resistant to certain diseases and performs really well in your soil type and your climate type, then you're already ahead of the game. After that, applying the correct nutrients at the correct time is essential, and you can figure that out by taking leaf and soil tests and getting an analysis done. And then, of course, you want to have effective irrigation and make sure it's working as efficiently as possible. And you can you can contact NRCS or VCRCD to get some tips on getting that set up properly. Pruning, thinning, and early harvest also. Pruning, thinning, and early harvest can also help the spread or help prevent the spread of disease and pests. And then cleaning your equipment. So again, you're not spreading disease and pests from one field to the next. So here I have a couple visual examples. And in the top left, we have a man washing off his equipment before entering the next field. And that, of course, will help prevent the spread of soil pathogens and weed seed, any kind of pests from one field to the next. 5-10 minutes of work here might save them a huge headache later on down the road. The middle picture on the top kind of illustrates why it's so important to walk your fields and make sure that your irrigation system is functioning properly. You don't have any leaks, clogs, anything like that to prevent the trees from getting exactly what they need for irrigation purposes. And on the right, I have an example of how skirt pruning can prevent a pest from getting established. So here we have a bunch of snails around the irrigation system, but because these skirts are pruned so nicely, they're not able to climb into the canopy and damage the fruit. And then on the bottom, I have a little snippet of an analysis done by taking leaf and soil samples into a laboratory. And they can really fine tune and give you a tailor fit recommendation on what nutrients need to be applied and when they should be applied. And doing all of this will help you have a nice, healthy tree that is much more resistant to disease and pest injuries. So next up on our pyramid, we have physical and mechanical control. And physical and mechanical control kills a pest directly, it blocks out pests, or makes the environment unsuitable for it. So things like physical barriers, mulches, mowing, traps, noisemakers to scare birds away, all of these are examples of physical and mechanical control. So if you can see on the left, we have some netting over some mandrins, and that's to prevent pollinators from establishing seeds in those fruit. Netting can also be a great technique used to keep birds out of vineyards and berries. On the top in the middle, we have a trap used for gophers, ground squirrels, anything that could be a pest in your growing region. And on the bottom here, deer fencing. Deer can be a huge issue in newly established orchards, and just keeping a barrier to keep them out can be extremely beneficial. And then on the right, we have some mulch, and that's very commonly seen around here, especially with some of our berry growers. And then on to biological control. So biological control is the use of natural enemies, predators, parasites, pathogens, and competitors. So this includes things like lacewing, lady beetles, predatory mites, parasitic wasps, spiders, also birds of prey, beneficial fungi, and nematodes. And a lot of these are already in our fields, keeping pests at a pretty low level. And we want to make sure that we're protecting these natural beneficials by using soft and selective insecticides when we do need to treat, so that we can maintain that population for future issues. We can also supplement beneficials by purchasing beneficial insects from our local insectaries. We can inoculate our soil with nematodes and fungi that can be beneficial to the crop. And then we can also create an environment that attracts beneficials to your field. So here's a couple of examples. On the top left, we have a Aphytus wasp parasitizing a red scale in citrus. This is one that can be purchased at a local insectary. On the top right, we have an owl box, and these are great if you have problems with ground squirrels, gophers, voles. You just have your full-time exterminator living right there on your field. And the bottom left, we have a parasitic fungi that can attack a number of insect pests. And in the bottom right, we have some beneficial nematodes that are destroying this soil grub. And finally, we have chemical control. So when we do need to apply chemicals, we always want to select the most effective and appropriate material for the job. And when we're making that application, we want to make sure that the sprayers are calibrated regularly, or if we're hiring a pest control service, make sure that they have calibrated their sprayers. Verify that the weather conditions will permit the application without undue drift, because of course we don't want to damage the environment, but we all know that those materials are extremely expensive and we want them to go where they're supposed to go. Make sure that we have good coverage, adequate coverage for that particular job. Limit impact on the non-target pests. So this is going back to our beneficials. We want to preserve them as much as possible. And rotate active ingredients. We want to make sure that we're not creating resistance in some of our pest populations, and we can use these chemistries for years to come. And then, of course, we want to stay current with all of the information available on that particular chemistry that we're using so that we're using it properly and safely. So here's a couple of examples of using the correct equipment for the job. So on the left, I have an image of an oscillating boom that's putting on fairly high volume and getting that material deep into the canopy of these trees. So most likely fighting red scale that's way deep in the on the scaffold branches. And on the right, we're hand spraying these newly planted trees. Of course, we wouldn't want to use a boom or an air blast for a situation like this, because we want that material just directly on the source and no drift off site. So finally, at the end of the growing season, we want to take a step back and take inventory on how our IPM program worked. So of course, we're going to keep records. We're going to find out what worked really well, what didn't work at all, how we can improve that program in the future. Can we limit our treatment area to one specific block? Maybe we have one block that is, historically always has a broad mite problem coming up, and it spreads out from there. Maybe we can isolate our treatment to that one area earlier on and prevent the spread throughout the rest of our growing area. Of course, we want to look at rotating those materials to prevent resistance, as we talked about in the last slide. And then we circle back to, are you up to date? And that goes back to the very foundation of IPM, your ID and understanding. Are you up to date at all the information available about your crop, about the pest pressures, about the chemistries used, and the various methods that you can use to keep your pest populations low using IPM? And that is all I have for you. I hope you enjoyed this quick introduction to IPM. And if you have any questions and want to learn further, go ahead and shoot me an email. Again, my name is Angela Vanoni, and hope to hear from you soon.